All right, I wanted to share about an exercise that I participated in a number of years ago and failed miserably. And there's a reason for this. And I've recreated this. This is actually someone else's product, but I've recreated it for the purposes of this slide presentation. It was called Builders and Architects. And let me just kind of go up here and show a little bit. The goal of this is to work together as a team to construct a bridge from a blueprint. Bridge from a blueprint. And so there are, different groups break into groups of 3, 4, or 5. Typically 4 or 5 is very helpful, and I'll explain why in a minute. There are 3 roles within this exercise. There's the role of the builder, there's the role of the architect, and there's the role of observer. So the builder is the one that sits in the builder's chair. And I'm telling you all of this because I want you to tell me what to do, all right? Because I lived through this, so I still have the pain of having gone through this and not done well. The builder sits in the builder's chair. And if you notice right at the very bottom, the builder remains the builder for the entire exercise. The builder never changes. And then there's the architect, and the architect sits in a chair facing away from the builder. Okay, the builder and the architect never see each other, and they never see each other's work. All right, that's important. The architect communicates directly with the builder, and the builder communicates directly with the architect. Everyone else are observers, and they stand around outside observing both the builder and the builder's work, and the architect's blueprints. Make sense? Now here's the thing. Any observer can tap out the architect at any time, and at that point the architect must stand up, the person who tapped out must sit down, and then that person becomes the new architect and communicates with the builder. Okay? So there is no talking, there is no gesturing, there is no movement that's allowed by anyone. The only thing that's allowed, the only communication, is conversation between the builder and the architect must be seated. So it's a two-way conversation between 2 people. Make sense? Couple questions. Who can speak? Only the person in the builder's chair, who stays builder for the whole duration, and the architect's chair, who is the person who is sitting there at the time. Who can tap out? Any observer can tap out at any time. In other words, I tap the architect stands up, I sit down, I become the new architect. Okay? Here are the materials that we used. 2 chairs facing away from each other that did not have rollers, by the way, because you got to stand up and sit down, and 2 magnetic tangram puzzles. So success was measured when the builder's tangram puzzle was the same as the architect's tangram puzzle. Make sense? So they had a timed exercise, and they said, okay, choose your builder, builder sits down, choose your architect, architect sits down, you hand the blueprint to the architect, and the builder, all they have is a jumble of pieces, and you say, go, and you start measuring. Well, let me tell you what happened with us. And it was curious because I was in the team with the CEO of the company. And this guy was a wonderful man, absolutely tremendous. I loved him like crazy. But when it came to communication, He had difficulty explaining things. I'm going to use, this as an example. He would say, "Oh, okay, you have a rectangle, rectangular shape, and it's turned up so that this sort of thing." And what occurred is, over the course of time, when the architect was trying to tell the builder how to arrange these various pieces so that this looked like this, once the CEO got into the architect's chair, we all were afraid to tap him out because he was our CEO. So after 10 minutes of us standing there going, "Ah!" and the architect, who was the CEO, "Well, okay, you have three triangles, and one is larger than the other two," and we're going crazy watching the time. All the other teams are doing well, but because the CEO spoke slowly and wanted to articulate everything that was going on, we were doing horrible. After 10 minutes, most of the other teams were already done, and we were nowhere near done. Of all the other teams, we were the worst. We were the worst. So, what do you think, if you were in this situation, what do you think we could have done that would have made things better? Remember the goal. The goal was to have the builders and architects' tangram diagrams be identical. What would you have done? Team, share.
I think the group should understand the context of the situation, that yes, your CEO was in that chair, but he's not the CEO of that actual activity going on. So within the walls of the activity, yes, he's the CEO of your whole company, but at this point in time, and then at this reference, he's still an architect, quote unquote. So with that knowledge in that mind, someone should have been brave, tapped him out and saying, "Hey, look, we're trying to get this time down. That's the objective. That's the mission." And a very quick story about this. I was in a similar situation teaching-wise. I probably told the story last week. The director wanted me to share what was on my mind. Actually, what was on my mind. I was scared to death to share what was on my mind. It took the director to sit there and say, "Chris, this is a course that we're taking, that you're trying to make yourself better. You're allowed to say whatever you want from me. I'm not your boss's boss here." And I feel that once you realize the context of the situation, where you are in the room, and who and what's going on, yeah, your CEO is your CEO, but you can explain yourself that we had a mission, we had a game to commit to, and therefore I tapped out. I tapped you out so I can help the team to make our goal and succeed. And the lesson I learned from that was, once you understand the context and the scenario of different of the activity, or even at work, you're allowed to speak up and say, "Hey, boss, here's what's going on." Communicate it that way, and then as positively and as productive as you can, work your way to that, as long as you have that clear process in the end. That's how I feel worked well. And it helps me understand the mission of what's going on. I'll leave it to the mentees.
Yep, very good. Anyone else? Anyone else? What would you have done? What would you have done different?
I was thinking that would it be useful if we change architects as far as we would find the right person who will understand Builder better than others in the team? Like, not everyone understands completely each other. Maybe some people understand each other better, and would it be useful in that situation?
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah,
I was gonna say the same thing. Maybe the architect and the builder should have switched places.
Remember, you selected your builder at the very beginning of the exercise, and the builder does not change. So that was a restriction. Yeah, the builder, all they have is this board with the little pieces, and you have to tell the builder what to do to be successful. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, so go ahead.
No, that's okay. You can go. Yeah, I will.
Well, I was just thinking, if only the builder can stay the same, then change the architect a number of times.
Keep going, Dave. You're on the right track.
Because everybody has to know what that. Sorry, I haven't had any coffee this morning, so it just everybody has to understand that diagram, and I think that's it's to me it's a kind of a communication issue that has to be overcome. We've been kind of harping at that work communication. You can never have too much. So even just something that you may not you may assume is that the other team members know, they don't. So it would be good to make sure that everybody understands that. So anyway, that's where I'm going with that.
Okay, Nerman, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say something similar like this. Yeah, I think like architect should be replaced. Like, I mean, that he's CEO, so that's not his job, and it looks like he doesn't even know how to explain what needs to be done, and it looks like nobody understands him. Like, so I would just tell them that. I mean, I would just tell them that he's not the right person to do that, and put someone.
Well, of course, you don't have to provide that sort of feedback.
Well, I would say. I mean, I don't know why people like afraid to job like that. Like, I mean, if I understand, like, we need money, and of course we have to feed family and stuff like that. But like, I mean, if you lose, you move on. You look for another job. Like, so I mean, I would really not let someone like to do whatever they want, like, because they're like over me, and I might lose job. Like, so I mean, and I guess, and there is nothing wrong like telling to your CEO that you don't understand him, like you don't know what he's talking about, or that he's not explaining well the thing. Like, I would tell, like, hey, sorry, I don't understand you. Like, I think we should put someone else like who might do this a little bit better than you, and you're a CEO, you do your job. So I mean, that's my opinion. I really I would tell him, like, and I don't know. I really don't have problem telling people those things.
In this exercise, in this exercise, who was responsible for, ultimately responsible for winning the game for your team? And yes, admittedly, we say everybody, but who made the winning? Who made the team successful? It was the builder, because the builder was the one moving the pieces on their little magnetic board. The builder would be the one that achieved success, okay? The architect was the one that communicated to make that success happen. But who had the most knowledge? All of the observers who could look and see the architect's end diagram, where we're supposed to go, and look at the builder's diagram and see the progress, but could not speak until they were in the architect's chair.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess they should just like replace architect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
someone who like, you know.
Here's what we found. And oh, by the way, the trick, the absolute trick to this is that the observers felt empowered to tap out the architect sometimes after they had sat in the chair for 10 seconds. Tap, go. Because then you would sit down and say, the piece you have your hand on, move it down half an inch. Turn it 90 degrees clockwise. You know, those sorts of things. Because you were staring right at it. You knew what the builder was doing, where they were at, and their progress. You just had to get into that architect chair so that you could communicate it. So what we learned is that we would be successful if the observers were the empowered people because they had the most information, and we were tap, 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 because we could see. The architect couldn't, the builder couldn't. We could see, and that made us more successful. Our 10-minute failure turned into a 2.5-minute success the second time we did it. So, like I said, down at the, and we talked about observers had an active role. You don't just sit and watch. Number 5, use a common language, left, up, 1 inch, trapezoid, whatever, so that you weren't like Richard was, oh, okay, you have, and he's a wonderful guy, but he spoke very slowly. You have 3 triangles, and no! Take the triangle that's above the square and move it to the right half an inch. Those sorts of things. You don't have to establish that common frame of reference in the middle of the exercise. You should have done that before. And last, the architect instructions and the builder's feedback are frequent, fluid, and unhindered. You know, there were times where the builder would say, did I do this right? And somebody would tap, sit down, and say, no, move it up half an inch. Because they were just looking at what the builder saw. The architect didn't see it. Tap out. So we learned that that architect chair was the hot seat, and we were in and out of that chair frequently in order to make sure that the communication to the builder, the person who was going to be successful, occurred.
Hey, Scotty, it's not exactly 10 seconds, correct? It's more of a how efficient you can transfer the observers and making sure
that's
that...
part of it.
It's not like, I would say the average time would be 10 seconds, but if you're getting like a bunch of progress from one observer who's sitting in the architect chair, you go up to a certain point where that observer is saying, okay, I don't remember the diagram anymore. Then the next observer will tap out to replace the architect, and they'll put more progress into the project. Okay, no, I'm good.
The architect's knowledge was dated. If you think about it, I remember what I saw when I sat down, but I don't know anything that the builder has done since then. So yeah, it was the trick for us was a frequent tap out, and oh, by the way, the CEO spent a lot of time sitting and watching as an observer. And I will tell you, this is something that I learned during this exercise that I have carried with me throughout my career, and it has helped me tremendously. And I don't mean to be trying to quote a rapper or whatever, but this is what I learned. In the end, business is business. Like Chris said at the very beginning, what is the goal here? The goal is to build a bridge. The goal is not to be nice. The goal is not to, say, well, what if his feelings get hurt? What if I leave the CEO crying on a heap over in the corner? Have we really succeeded? No, the goal, the success of the business was to build that bridge. And whatever we needed to do to get that done is what we should have done. So I learned this phrase, and I kept it with me for 20 years. Business is business. So if I'm working with people on the job site and somebody's like, well, I got problems with my kids at home, and that's why I'm not so focused at work. Well, business is business. I realize you've got your focus there on your home. Why don't you take some time off, get that done, so you can come back and focus yourself? Business is business. This is where we're going to be successful. This is where we will prevail and, have a job tomorrow and all that. But if something is involved in that, a good old boy network, I'm sure you guys have heard of some of those things, where it's like, this guy gets all the work, the fun work, because he's buddies or next door neighbors with the president of the company or something like that. Well, business is business. It's not about personalities. It's about making sure that the business is successful. So things like that shouldn't occur. It doesn't matter about the personalities. What matters is, how do you get the job done? And so I will tell you that this 3-word phrase has dominated me over the last 20 years and made me as successful as I was. When I finally left my last job, I was managing 115 people. And, I thought I was doing pretty well at it. So it's just something that you learn in the course of your time. Use them all together and you can be successful. Any thoughts, any ideas, any observations? Tell me I'm wrong.
Scotty,
Anyway.
I won't say you're wrong. I'm going to say, and this is personal experience for me, I'm not going to say this could happen to the mentees at all. You're going to have times when you're working where you're going to be feeling that something's not going as planned or going as right for your plans. But you need to understand what your company's goals and interests are, and then I'll say act accordingly. And when I say act accordingly, there's a lot of options you can take from there. Option one could be is, hey, company says we do this. Okay, I'll do this. We'll take care of it. Option B could be, okay, I'll do it, but you know what? When I get home, I'm going to go look for my next chapter of my life kind of situation. And then the final option could be, sorry guys, I don't agree with you, and here's my 2 weeks, and walk away. That's
Right.
That's tough. That's tough to me.
I understand. Let's discuss a little bit less critical situation. How about a standard operating procedure that is incorrect? You have found a more efficient, more accurate, higher quality result when you do something different than the standard operating procedure that your team has been given. How do you approach that?
Want me to continue to
How
keep
would you?
talking? I'll let the mentees talk.
Well, any mentee, how would you approach that? You've got a standard operating procedure that says A, B, C, D, and with your own separate research, you found that A, B, D, C is actually more efficient and will work better. What do you do?
Provide evidence for that. I would say first, you have to have specific examples and then bring it to the team's attention, because you're not just going to change it by your own, well, this is what I think. You've got to have concrete data or, specific examples for that to happen. Anyway,
Kate,
next.
Kate, you were unmuted.
Yeah, and with this evidence, we should address this to the procedure manager or process manager, and only after that we could we couldn't decide by ourselves should we change this order or not.
I will give you an example of an individual that was on my team. We had SOPs to do certain things, but he had found other things that worked for him. He made those customers successful by doing what he thought was best. But what actually occurred in the long run is, and by the way, this guy was a manager. He only did this because he was dealing directly with the VIPs in the organization. And he said, I know what to do. Here's what to do. Go back to work now. And he was done. What happened was, okay, I'm going to use his last name. Sheehan was his last name. What happened is, over time, all of the workstations that he touched became non-standard because he had applied his little magic trick or tricks to them, and the project manager for the service desk, after a while, said, my people aren't working on those workstations because they've been, his word, Sheehanized. You have made that workstation, maybe it worked, but now it's non-standard, so when anyone else approaches it, they don't know what they're dealing with. This guy thought, absolutely, all I'm doing is, making these VIPs happy so they can get back to work quickly, and I'm done. It's Miller time, off he goes. But that is not the way to do it. So I absolutely agree. The important thing here is not to do what you think is best here, but to help change the process so that everyone is doing what you think is best. And that means change the SOP before you start, launching out on your own to do things. Get the SOP changed. Like Dave said, present proof. Hey, look at this, this improves this, higher quality, lower error rate. I really think we should change this. And, oh, by the way, if the process owner says, no, we're going to keep doing it this way, you have no option but to keep doing it that way. That's important. You don't own the process. So you grit your teeth and do it the way the process owner says to. Recommend, but don't get upset. You don't own the process. You're working within the framework of that particular service. Okay? Great stuff. What do you guys think? I mean, I failed miserably and right in front of the CEO because I refused to do this on his shoulder. because he was the bloom. He owned me. He wrote my paychecks. I didn't want him to feel bad about me because I kept saying, no, I'm better than you. Thoughts, ideas. We're almost at the end of our session, but what do you guys think?
I feel it's a great lesson learned.
Me too. I really enjoyed it. I liked it.
Yeah, it was pretty painful, but it really focused me on the business of what I'm doing. And it was all about, Dave, you mentioned it was all about communication. Not only common terminology, but who to communicate with, how to be successful, identifying where your critical success is. There's one last thing I wanted to share on the screen, and I just said the team's biggest critical success factor is when they all understand the terminology, their successful technique, and are all comfortable exercising it fluidly. That's how a team becomes successful. Make sense? Cool. Okay. Well, that's all I had for today. I'm going to turn off the recording